welcome back to my channel, welcome back to Hart Fitness. In today's video, I'm going to provide you with some tips in order to train smart for your long distance based event, whether that's a marathon or a half marathon. But with these tips, you will feel empowered, confident and ready for your race. First smart tip is to not jump the gun. Now, what I mean by this is when you finish a race, you will have plenty of endorphins in your body. We often get what's called the runner's high. So you finish the race, you've done amazingly well, you've completed it in a time that you've really been proud of. They're all talking about how wonderful the race is, how much they enjoyed, what they didn't, but you're still in a great environment to soak up all that enthusiasm and all those positive vibes and energy. So when you finish a race, the first thing you might want to do is never go near a race again, or you can get what is called the runner's addiction and you want to go straight in for another race. In your head you're thinking, I've done lots of training, I'm ready for the next race, I know that I can train, when actually the smart thing to do is to really give yourself a break. If this is your first or even just your second marathon, when you're early on, you need your body, and even established runners, you need some time to recover from the race. Remember, you only do that 26.2 miles once when you're training, and that is on race day. So your training plan will include the race day 26.2, but leading up to that point, you're never doing that amount in one run. So your body, even though it's trained for that time, once you've actually done that race, there is a huge knock-on effect physically on what your body can do in the future. So you need to give yourself normally about 5 weeks of recovery. Sometimes you might want to do a week where you just completely avoid running at all, which isn't an unwise thing to do. Sometimes just giving your body that time to unwind, do some stretching, maybe do some yoga sessions. At the same time, then you want to do a proper recovery plan of about 5 weeks before you start even engaging into another plan. So if you think about doing 5 weeks recovery and then you've got in mind, oh, there's another running event in a couple of months, you're not giving yourself enough time to actually prepare yourself for the next running race. Now obviously this is a generalized conception because there's plenty of elite athletes that will do a number of races back to back, but you got to remember that if you're an elite athlete, you are because you're elite, and the way that you train is to train for multiple races. And even with people doing multiple races, there is some sort of leeway with training properly between that section. If you are a novice, even up to an intermediate, possibly into some of the advanced, you still need that recovery time. So it is always wise to not jump the gun and go straight into another event. So that leads into tip number 2, and that is to give yourself recovery time. Sometimes when you finish a race, you feel that you've built up all this amazing strength and endurance, and your body feels so much stronger from doing this training. But once you've done that race itself, the amount of damage that it does internally in terms of breaking down those muscle fibers is quite intense. And if you don't actually finish a race without feeling some form of stiffness, soreness, you're very lucky. Pain, maybe you have your ankles feel a bit sore, or your hips might feel a bit sore, your core, basically the whole body. You need to make sure that you're recovering properly. And like I said, finding a proper recovery plan of about 5 weeks is normally sufficient in order to help you get through that. But it's making sure that you actually pick one that is a proper training plan and not something that just goes run a couple of miles here and there and do a couple of stretches. You need stretches that are actually designed and tailored towards runners. So things like a hamstring stretch, a gluteal stretch, making sure that there are calf stretches involved. Proper stretches that actually target the muscle groups that have been attacked during this running race. So make sure that when you have done the race with your smart tip, before you start engaging into another plan, that you do have that recovery period. And this can be difficult, and this is where you have to really structure how many events you think you can actually do in a year, and this is all linked with your smart training. Because when you are training for events, you may want to do more than one a year, which is fine because you're trying to see if you can establish a faster time along the way. So you want to make sure that if you are training for sort of May time, June, and then you've got another consecutive one in the January, that you have still got that block period for recovery before starting your next 16, 18, 12-week plan, depending on how much time and how much flexibility you have. So tip number 3 leads on from what I've just said with the 18, 16, 12 week, is looking at plans and suiting the best option for yourself. Now there are plenty of different plans that have different forms of periodization. Some are only 12 weeks long, some are 18 weeks. I have seen ones that go for 26 weeks as well, and that is normally the run, walk, run method, because you're normally limited to about 3 runs a week. If you are doing a 26-week plan, that takes a lot of preparation, a lot of dedication, and you've really got to block out all that time, because if it's giving you 26 weeks in order to improve, that is the set time that you need. It's not just a generalized idea, it's you need to hit those runs. Especially if you're only training 3 times a week, I would say that you definitely need to be hitting those runs in order to complete the marathon as you need to. So think about your lifestyle. I, for one, am a mother of 2 very young children. I've got a 3-year-old and now a 15-month-old. So I have to really think about how much time I can dedicate to training and how many weeks I can put in with a full grind. Now, I am fortunate in the fact that I don't have a 9 to 5. I am a stay-at-home mum, so I have that flexibility in regard to not having to go to work and then have children as well. But my children are my full-time commitment. So I'm making sure that when I'm planning my training and planning my runs, that they are in kind of unsociable hours. So I do try and do them early in the morning, even though that's quite difficult sometimes. And also at the weekends, making sure I do them early enough so that my children actually get a full day's worth of me playing with them, rather than going, okay, half of the day you're not going to see me. So you have to think about how many weeks of your year or how much time you've got in order to commit to your training. Now, with that in mind, depending on the type of plan that you're doing, some dedicate 4 days a week, some 5, some 6, very few 7. If it's 7 days a week, it's normally because you're really elite, really advanced. 6 days a week is an advanced training plan. That's quite a lot to push, and it's not easy miles. 5 days a week, again, very similar, difficult long miles. It's the nature of marathon training, unfortunately. So make sure that you have a plan, as I said, that suits you, but look at how much mileage and how much time you're going to have to dedicate out of that time to pick a plan that works in either the 12, 16, 18 week schedule. So after completing your initial race, so tip number 4 falls in line with this. After you've completed your initial race, you've recovered properly, you've come down from that runner's high to evaluate the next best option for your next race, and you've picked a training plan that suits you in terms of your time, your ability to actually train, and the commitments you have outside. Tip number 4 is educate yourself. Now, it sounds bizarre, but training for a marathon is not an easy option by any stretch of the imagination, and actually educating yourself on how to train and how to run is one of the best things that you can possibly do. A lot of people think that you just run in a marathon, but there is so much surrounding it that will actually help you to benefit properly and how to be successful in your marathon training. And this is a series that I am going to be providing chapter by chapter on how to improve your marathon ability in terms of hydration, looking at types of training, going more in depth in those types of runs that you need to complete. Those will be in subsequent videos, but for now I'm just going to show you some of the books that I'm reading currently, and this is what I mean by saying educate yourself. So the first thing, so this says advanced marathon training. There are plenty of books that aren't necessarily like advanced marathon training, but you can certainly go for women's marathon runs or runners in general. There's Runners World books, there's plenty of content on Amazon, but make sure that you are looking at the credentials and looking maybe at who's writing these marathon books. So I'm looking at this one. This is a 3rd edition of the advanced marathon book. It is very in-depth, but it really focuses on people that are that much further along in their marathon training. So if you're quite new to it, this isn't the book for you, but if you are more advanced and you're trying to think of the next steps in your training, this is definitely the way to go. Daniels is really recommended and really highlighted and commended in running. So what I would say is, if you are interested in running but you want to know more of the scientific background to it, this is a great one. It goes into a lot of concepts, looking at the best method of training, but it also covers a number of different races. This isn't just for marathon training, so maybe if you're training for a half marathon, a 5k, 10k, there are all those types of races built into this book, and it tells you how to effectively train for them. So again, this is something where education really benefits yourself. In terms of fueling, you've got this book here, which is Performance Nutrition. It is again a really good book. It gives you the understanding of why carbohydrates, proteins and fats are so important. It talks to you about electrolyte loss and what the importance of sodium is in your diet and in terms of when you are training for a marathon or training for a running event, why you need to have those electrolytes in your body. Again, this is a chapter in the topic that I'm going to go over in depth in my running base series. And lastly, I've got this cookbook here, which is Run Fast, Cook Fast, Eat Slow. It's got Shalane Flanagan in it. She is a Olympic silver medalist and she won the 2017 New York City Marathon. Let's try and get that words out. So this is a really good cookbook because it not only gives you recipe ideas, but it also gives you her lifestyle and training tips that can actually help you train effectively for marathon day. Marathon training, marathon eating can be very polar in what you want to actually do. Sometimes when you finish a race, the first thing you go for is the sweet cupboard because you just want that sugar to refuel you. But this book actually helps you to understand better ways to refuel yourself and gives you a lot of good recipes. Now, I'm not particularly, now I will put my hand up, and there are some recipes that I'm not very good with. So things like coconut sugar, I'm not a good fan of, but they do provide you with substitutes. So you don't have to go for the full out healthy option of everything, but you can adapt these recipes to suit you, but keeping most of the ingredients as they should be in this book, because a lot of the ingredients they do provide you with are for the benefit of your endurance training and actually providing enough fuel for you, recovery, pre-run and during your race. So education as well extends to not only just understanding the nutrition aspect of your running, but also to apply it to yourself and try to do those and to try those recipes out for yourself. So tip number 5 on smart training is to actually apply what you educate yourself with in the real situation. Now, in particular, what I'm going to be talking about is actually fueling yourself during your races. When you are racing and when you are running and training, sometimes people think, oh, I don't need to fuel myself, I'll just save my fueling for race day. Big no. Make sure that you are fueling yourself during your long runs, or if you're doing a mid-long run in the week, you still want to make sure that if it's anything sort of over 5 or 6 miles, that you're applying that natural process of fueling your body as you would on race day. Making sure that you take your water bottle, see if you can add your electrolytes into your drink. Some people will run with things like Powerade, etc., but there are better fuel sources than Powerade. Again, if you go in the recipe book, sometimes they will give you better options than just going for the Gatorade or the Powerade. They're not the worst things in the world, but if you can fuel yourself naturally, sometimes that can be an added benefit because it will help your mindset, not just your health benefit, but actually just mentally go, I'm not pumping myself full of Powerade all the time. So my next smart tip links into your clothing, and I've said this before, but whenever you are training, particularly in your long runs, you want to train in the clothes that you're going to be wearing on race day. Don't wear shorts that are breathable and movable if you're then going to wear lycra on race day, because you're not going to help yourself if you're training in different clothes to what you're going to wear on race day. You need to understand whether you can actually wear those clothes for 26 miles or whether it's going to be uncomfortable. Think about if you're wearing a t-shirt. So if you're wearing a t-shirt on race day, is that going to be an actual comfortable one for you? Would you rather go sleeveless? Would you wear a sports bra? And then think about where you're going to be putting your bib, because bib placement can be a huge thing to deal with, particularly if you're not going to be wearing a top on race day. Also, another tip in terms of your bibs and what you're going to wear on race day, one of the things that I found from Shalane Flanagan is she doesn't actually pin her bib through the bib holes that they provide. She does it a little bit in, and this is so that the bib is placed closer to your body and there's actually less air resistance. I found that from the cookbook, and that was one amazing tip that I found in there of many, so I wanted to make sure that I gave that one off to you right now. But lastly, with your smart training, it is so much to try and take on. There's a lot of information that you can draw out of your education in terms of your training, and it can actually seem quite overwhelming at times. So in terms of your smart training, is take on one thing at a time. So each week you will focus on something new, one thing new. So you'll start thinking about hydration properly, you'll start thinking about how to fuel yourself post race, you'll think about the next week doing your stretches properly. And even if it isn't all in one, eventually you'll kind of cyclone it all together and you'll make this great informational hub of what you need to do in order to train successfully. You don't want to suddenly go, okay, I'm going to go all out and try and eat everything healthy and eat everything from the book that I can possibly do, because that's so overwhelming. If you're doing all these miles already, you're trying to drink properly, you're still juggling your normal life, and then you're changing your diet completely. Take one recipe at a time, one for lunch, one for dinner, one for breakfast throughout the week. Mix them into your normal diet, and then slowly over time add more. And that's everything with smart training, and hopefully these tips will help you in order to start structuring your training plan effectively. As I said, I'm going to be providing a running series with information on how to fuel properly, talking about things like hydration, looking into forms of stretches, other forms of training that can benefit alongside your running, and that will be coming out in the following weeks. So if that's something you're interested in, please make sure that you do put it in the comment section below to say that you actually would like that sort of content out on this channel. Please make sure, if you haven't already, to like this video if you like it by the end, and subscribe to this channel so you get plenty of information on your running and also your general fitness. But for me, it's bye for now. 'Cause you are the one that's treating me right. You could be my only one.